Alright, hey guys, I wanted to kind of go through the synthesis prompt I wrote with you guys so you can see how I did it and compare it to yours to see where you're at, some ideas you might want to take. So we'll start with kind of going through my prompt and what I annotated, and then we'll get into what I actually wrote. So we'll start kind of with the sources here. You can see here's source A, source B, C, D, and E. So you can see my annotations are not that in depth. I didn't spend a lot of time annotating. I annotated some things, but only what helped me kind of get towards answering the prompt. And so an important thing to keep in mind, how we're asking you to annotate in class and how you have to annotate on a timed writing is slightly different. So in class, we want much more in-depth annotations. When you only have 15 minutes to read 6 sources, your annotations are going to be a little quicker. That doesn't mean you shouldn't annotate. You absolutely should still annotate, but it's not going to look the same. You have to be able to separate out what you do in class from what you do on the test. So on the front page here, you can see I annotated a lot more, so we'll kind of go through and talk about what I did there. So first thing, in the directions, I underlined some key ideas for myself. So this idea that I should be referring to the sources to support my position, to support my argument. I'm not summarizing them. That's an important idea. There were some people, as I was reading through your guys' synthesis essays, who spent some time summarizing the sources rather than kind of using them to support their argument. In the introduction information, they give me some background information about Phyllis Wheatley. It was good information. I didn't need it all, and I'll talk about that as we get into our paper. So I annotated a couple things there, and then where a lot of my annotations were under the actual assignment. So the first thing I did was I need to synthesize at least 3 sources. That's a big thing. No, I've got to have 3. They give me 6. I need to use at least 3, so I mark that. Then I marked the 2 choices I have. Develop a position whether Wheatley was a conventional thinker or whether she was a subversive artist. And you can see out here on the right side, I kind of rephrased them in my own words to make sure I really understood them. If I struggle to put them in my own words, I don't really understand them, so I need to go back and reread it, look for some context clues, things like that. So was she a conventional thinker or was she a rebel who played the game? You can see I circled B. That happened after I read the sources. So I'm talking about my annotations a little bit out of order, so keep that in mind. But you can see I ended up picking B. Then after I had read all the sources and I had picked B, I still had some time left, so I started kind of doing a real quick outline of what I was going to write. Don't be afraid to outline your essay during this time. There's no reason you can't. If you have time left, start thinking about what you're going to write, how you're going to put it together. An outline helps. Please, please, please plan your essays. It helps. There's a reason we ask you to do it. So you can see here, I'm going with option B. She was a rebel. I'm going to have 3 main points. She saw some good things about America, and I'm going to support that with source D and source A. She was a rebel. She was rebelling against waiting or patience. I'm going to support that with source C and source D. And she gained that admiring readership, and I'm going to support that with source B. So I've done everything the prompt is asking me. Was she a subversive artist who shrewdly cloaked her rebellious thoughts in a form most likely to gain her an admiring readership? So I've got the rebellious thoughts, I've got the admiring readership, and I'm adding in there were some good things she's found about America. And then you can see up here this arrow 1, 2, and 3. I used source D, I used source C, I used source B. So I've used my 3 sources. So during the 15 minutes, that's what I got done. So let's look at the writing here. Alright, so in my introduction, you can see here, I open up. This is all the background information I really give. Phyllis Wheatley, a former slave turned published author, long been a controversial figure. I'm establishing that conversation. I don't spend a lot of time about being sold into slavery at 7, the Wheatley's teaching her to read and write, that kind of stuff. It doesn't necessarily help my argument. If you use it, that's okay, but don't spend too much time on it. I didn't want to spend any time on it, so I didn't use it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. If you did, that's not a bad thing. Just make sure you don't spend too much time on it. You don't want a paragraph giving her biography. You only have 40 minutes. So you got to get to your argument. But you do need to establish that conversation you're entering into. Going back to that analogy we've been talking about all semester, that dinner party. You're walking in, a conversation's taking place, you're adding to it. The conversation here, Phyllis Wheatley, controversial figure. Then I do that they say move. Some people believe she held conventional beliefs. Others believe she was a rebel. That's the they say. That's my yellow there. Then I give my thesis. You got to give your position. Fact is, Wheatley was a rebel who was playing the game so her message could reach a broader, more influential audience. Very clear thesis right there. I'm clearly answering the prompt. You want to make sure you do that. Then the body paragraphs, always open with a claim. No doubt, Phyllis Wheatley found some good things about America. Tells me in this paragraph, I'm going to talk about what are some good things Wheatley saw in America. Always introducing that quote, and then putting it in your own words, which I do here in the blue and the pink. So this is where I bring in my first source, source D. She writes, "'Twas mercy brought me from pagan land, then I put it into my own words." Gotta make sure the reader understands what I think the quote means. Here, Wheatley is informing the reader she appreciates the Christianity she found in America. Then I go back to as they say. While some read these lines as irony, then I get into my analysis and the I say. The truth is that Wheatley's consistent references to God and Christianity throughout her works demonstrates that she is serious in referring to her pleasure in learning that there's a God and a Savior too. I bring in source D again. So right there, claim, quote, analysis, quote, analysis. Now I get into her as a rebellious thinker. Although Wheatley does believe there are some good things about America, she's not a conventional thinker. So that first paragraph was kind of me acknowledging and refuting a counterargument. Yes, there were some things she liked about America, but that didn't make her a conventional thinker. She's a rebel, preaching equality rather than patience, which was the conventional argument of the time. Then I go into my quotes. Then I give my analysis. So while writing letter of support to Orcam, so I'm going to use source C here. I give source C. Again, put it in my own words. Wheatley is affirming her belief that every human, regardless of race, yearns to be free. This idea and the vocal manner in which Wheatley expressed her agreement for this idea was not an acceptable notion. So now I'm getting that analysis piece. How does this show she's a rebel? Another claim, another quote, some more analysis. So I've established she's not a conventional thinker. I've established she's a rebel. Now I need to establish that admiring readership piece. So I do that here in this paragraph by bringing in the George Washington source. Final aspect of Wheatley to consider is how she found an audience for her message. Wheatley understood that her message was rebellious, but she also knew that to get it out to the widest audience where it would do the most good, she had to play the game. First example of this is her letter to George Washington. Now I start to put it into my own words. Washington, clearly impressed with Wheatley's letter, invites her for a meeting, demonstrating that Wheatley's tactic is successful. It's working. She's getting this admiring readership. Another way Wheatley appealed to the audience was through the medium she used. Her poetry in meter and form clearly emulated, and this is where I go back to source D, the wealth of the white men's literature, which she found herself quite saturated. So she's using their meter, their method of getting messages across. She's using their style to build that readership. By mimicking these poets, Wheatley establishes her ethos, which allows her message a wider reach. Then I get to my conclusion. I just summarize my main points. Wheatley was not a wholly anti-America. She was a rebellious thinker who advocated for equality and freedom. You can see here, I got done with about 1:30 left. So with the synthesis prompt, it's really important that you remember you're not summarizing these sources. You're using these sources to back up your argument. You've got to get to at least 3 of them. So you got to write kind of quick. You got to build up that stamina. As always, if you have any questions about what I've done here or what you got on your paper when you get it back, please feel free to talk to me. I'm available during my planning period, during lunch or after school. You can always email me questions as well. I'll make sure that you have access to my essay here and my annotated prompt so you can compare that to yours. And I look forward to seeing you guys in class. Thanks.